Hey there, guys. The snot must flow. At least it did last week. But thankfully, it finally dried out, so I can actually do another one of these. Name's Adam.
I'm into it, and not just the snot, but the spice must flow.
Yep, the spice and the illnesses, everything must flow. I'm not kidding. It was not very fun last week. I could barely talk. That's why I did not even bother to try a stream, since not only was I sick, but to give you an idea, in the following order, the Diopsid got sick, Mrs. got sick, Greg got sick. I think even Tech got sick at one point. Not even kidding. It was fucking ridiculous. And originally, because of that, I was going to honor Grandpa Nurgle, but thankfully, the Discord, which you can get into the description, decided to change our opinions because of a hit movie made by Villeneuve, part two of a story that kind of ends on a cliffhanger, but not really. And in honor of that film coming out, we decided to cover the setting of West. I almost said Frank West for some reason, Reanimator. That would have been funny. That's incorrect. It is Dune, Adventures in the Imperium, the role-playing game that was made by Modiphius. I think there was an earlier RPG that was made in the early 2000s, but it was like a very limited run sort of thing. Might have been made for the. There was a mini series that also came out around that time, I think.
Hmm. In line with the TV series that they had for it.
No, I think it was inspired to be released because of the mini series.
Ah,
So in this one, it starts with a pretty nice cover of. I believe they're actually partially based on Villeneuve's characters, like the design ethos he did. Like they got
the,
stills from
yeah,
it,
the design is clearly Villeneuve inspired.
but it
I mean,
works. It works
also
pretty
because
well.
it's, if you can see, it's brought to us by Legendary, who owns the film rights.
That would explain it. That would also explain why that Mentat back there looks like the actor. Dune: Adventures in the Imperium. And it's a Modiphius product, so it's very colorful. A lot of effort was put into its design, which is to its benefit. It's also, since it is Modiphius, it has its negatives if you're not a fan of the dice system they use. Oh, that's good. Chapter 1 is a nice two-page spread of just showing the. Oh, God, yeah, that. So, do we like Dune? Oh,
Yes,
I love the first movie. I actually am planning on going out to see part two sometime this week.
I have finished the first book. I'm trying to get all the way through because, as a fan of Warhammer, I need to like this.
I,
I
I
need to get
have
the
I
God
have
Emperor.
heard that the later books are nowhere near as good as the first one,
God
and that
Emperor gets
anything
trippy,
done
is what
by
I've heard.
Herbert's son sucks.
Herbert's son continued after the book Chapter House Dune, and they did a prequel series about the Butlerian Jihad.
Which is why you don't have thinking machines in this setting.
Yes, if you want to know why in Warhammer there's that prohibition against AI, it is entirely from this.
Yep. Chapter 1, the introduction. And that day dawned when Arrakis lay at the hub of the universe and the wheel poised to spin. They also have a scene from. This was an art still, by the way, if you're wondering, when they were making the first movie, which showed off the thumpers. Some reason you bounced off of Dune? That's fine. It happens. Like I
So
said, it suffers from the first couple of books being at its strongest. It's similar to how some people nowadays probably wouldn't be able to get into Neuromancer because it actually kind of is somewhat dated. Because its opening line from Neuromancer is the sky is akin to that of of a television without a signal.
oh yeah, no, most young people will not get that reference.
Yeah, because you don't get static snow no more. You get blue screen of death.
I will have to say, not just the movie, the most recent movie of Dune I like, I do like the one in the 80s.
Oh yeah, the Lynch one. Uh, in Lynch's own word, David Lynch's own words, he described it as his personal nightmare. It's kind of to him what Alien 3 is to Fincher.
I, the campiness of the Harkonnens is, I believe, supposed to be correct to the books. I do
Yes and
like
no. They oversold the character.
Skarsgård's, yeah, I do like Skarsgård's interpretation though. It's a lot more menacing.
I think that's because that's actually closer to the books, like the version from Lynch, from what I understand. Yeah, he's somewhat bombastic, but not to that degree.
Degeneracy though is Lynch's. That is Baron is supposed to be a fat degenerate slob.
But yeah, we're in the year 10,000 AD. It is essentially feudalism has
Not
returned.
not
Deadly.
80
Hmm?
AG
Oh,
after Guild.
after guilds. Okay.
It's important to know because one thing we don't know where Earth is.
Ah.
That's how far in the future.
So yeah, humanity's not just advanced but evolved. Mentats are a thing. Others have learned the martial arts skills from the Bene Gesserit. So and don't forget about how spice forces you to do even more crazy things.
Spice melange.
Yep, without it, you legitimately can't have an empire. Uh, Basically, space travel wouldn't work anymore without it.
'Cause that's what the navigators use to fold space.
And it's only found
And
on one planet, Arrakis.
also called Dune by the Fremen people, the not Bedouins.
Yep. Might want to, again, you might want to test your microphone volume. You're still a little quiet. Although, viewers, you might want to also correct me on this. I still have some clogged sinuses, which dampen my own hearing a bit.
Do I sound like shit?
Well, you don't sound like shit, but you sound quiet to me. But that's just me personally. Like I said, my own hearing's a little bit dampened. And while that's going on, I actually kind of like that they give you the overview right here. That's something I think the Star Trek book did as well. And I kind of like that. It just
What
tells
about
you what
now?
you need here. You sound the same
Better?
to me personally. Ah, you are a bit quiet, so it's not just me. I can maybe fix it. Let me do a little experimentation. Boop. All right, let's experiment by using the chord of Discord, and let's just ramp up your volume even more. There we go. Let's see how that goes.
Echo, echo, echo.
Yeah, you sound better now.
Yay.
Hello there, not Nito. So, what is Dune? If you're unfamiliar with Dune, either the novel or the new motion pictures, they give you a bit of an overview. So, it was published in sci-fi magazines during the 60s, and the original Dune follows the life of Paul Atreides, the heir to the powerful house of Atreides. And he's not a normal guy. Basically, the overarching plot of Dune, I'm not going to spoil too much, is that he is almost he was essentially forged and created to be almost a messiah-like figure by the whims of politicians. The Bene Gesserit, in particular, had a particular interest in boosting him. And Dune itself is kind of a criticism of prophecy and the idea of blindly following someone.
One of my favorite quotes of Frank Herbert, he said this about Dune, is what it's about essentially is, charismatic leaders. Warning, may be hazardous to your health.
The funniest thing is I am almost not surprised that another sci-fi author probably was inspired by that. His name was George R. R. Martin. The problem is he didn't finish a story. He didn't organize that. Also, he's trying to treat it as a series rather than what it should be, a single saga. You never write a fantasy series. You write a story set in fantasy. Yes, I'm poo-pooing on Martin. Also, if you're wondering, I think I figured out what the final conclusion of the original Song of Ice and Fire was going to be. It's a hint. It's in the name. It's based on a poem that basically is very nihilistic and talks about essentially how would you want to die. That should give you an idea on what that's like. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. I apologize
Um,
for that.
at
We're
the
talking
age
about
of at
Dune.
the age To quote Game of Thrones, at the age of 80, with a belly full of wine and a woman on my cock.
Oh no,
Just love
your
that
picks are
line.
between fire and ice. What horrible death do you wish for? Fire is the kinder of the two since it's usually so quick. But if you've tasted death before, why not enjoy the dark, deep freeze of ice? Uh, wasn't a criticism of the U.S. and the Middle East. No, A Song of Ice and Fire wasn't really that. It was, I mean, a lot of Martin's work is basically war bad because he was Dune, criticism of U.S. and the Middle East. No, it was written in the '60s,
Oh,
not Nido.
yeah. It is. It's taking inspiration from the Bedouins. So
It's
maybe
more,
a little bit
it's
from
more
that, but
tied to it's more tied to the best way to describe it is it kind of reminds me a little bit of Jack Vance's Dying Earth slightly, in that you're dealing with a humanity that is heads and shoulders above anything we can think of, but in the process they lost a lot of the aspects of what humanity is.
it's more of a universal criticism of, again,
There's an
charismatic
element of
leaders.
mysticism, but the big theme is beware of messiahs because they will carve their way with blood. It is not through peace but with a sword. And that is the life of Paul Atreides. Billions will die.
So explain a little bit more about the universe of Dune.
Okay, so the universe of Dune. At this point, it's very much a feudalist structure. Technology has both ossified and improved in some ways, and not in others. There was a time period where there was thinking machines, known as abominable intelligences, AI, but that was wiped during the Butlerian Jihad because essentially there was a fear that AI and artificial intelligence would overthrow humanity because they
It's
did
not
so much for them.
in the original movie. They did say basically it was men with other machines took over.
Hmm.
It was a criticism of being idle and wasteful and having machines do the work for you. I believe in the Ryan Herbert books, it was actual AI.
Ah.
AI controlled things.
Also, if you're wondering why it's called the Butlerian Jihad, by this point religion has mutated heavily. So I believe in the timeline, the main religion initially was something akin to if you splice Catholicism with Sunni Islam.
There's Zen Sunni.
Yeah.
There is what will come after, which is the Orange Catholic Bible, and I will spoil this: the Jews. I am not kidding. Rabbinical Judaism survives.
But yeah, the basic plot of the book is that Paul Atreides is the product of essentially what is it? A couple centuries of prophecy construction.
Could be more.
It's a while. Basically, his own life was orchestrated by the Bene Gesserit to essentially serve as this messiah figure for their own political schemes. He is orchestrated to go onto this planet known as Arrakis. He originally went to from a far better world called Caladan. It's better in terms of livelihood, but in terms of money, Arrakis is where it's at, baby. But by doing this, he basically orchestrates a big inter-house feud, which culminates in war against the Imperium itself, billions of death, and a weird worm spawn becoming emperor. Oh, that's a
Yeah.
lot later.
Yes. So in the society of Dune, the known space is, or the known universe is called the Imperium. It is currently ruled by the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV of House Carino. The rest of the noble houses are made up of the Landsrat. You have major houses, you have minor houses, and they all work in a system. They make things, they do things such as produce spice or manage the spice production. Uh,
Basically, it's heavily feudalized and decentralized because, again, with the death of thinking machines, you and the death of a lot of technology and also just the scale of what you're working with because you're dealing with galactic communications. We're talking light years. You kind of are left to do whatever the hell you want as long as you follow basic Imperial protocol because they can't really constantly keep an eye on you. This is actually kind of unironically similar to how Battletech goes into feudal houses. The reason feudalism kind of makes a reappearance and loose associations become a thing is just because of distance. Like after a certain point, you legitimately can't manage a system that large.
And with the collapse of the thinking machines, you essentially have humans doing the work of machines. So, for travel, you have the navigators. Navigators are humans that use spice to hold space. You have mentats, human computers. Bene Gesserit have essentially psychic powers. They have incredible control of their bodies. They have also a lot of understanding of genetics and genetic manipulation.
And they're supposed to ostensibly be neutral, but again, the entire existence of Paul Atreides is purely their manipulations.
You have other groups, the Bene Tleilaxu, who create are more like biological creators. They create these guys called face dancers, which are shapeshifters. You have the Suk Medical School, which produces doctors that are completely loyal and follow the Hippocratic Oath completely. They cannot harm you, which is why they're so beloved by the nobles, because their doctors won't slice their own throats.
They won't. There's basically so state policy is just don't make me come over there. Yeah, essentially. The Padishah Emperor doesn't really do much. He sends agents in his stead in their ships, and essentially they go on progress tours to just make sure that the noble houses aren't getting too out of hand. Because interhouse rivalry isn't a problem as long as it doesn't ruin the Imperium's essentially running of things.
And you also don't want to get certain groups popular, such as uh, House Atreides. What starts off the series of that House Atreides is getting very popular and is awarded the ownership of Arrakis. They are to
Which
manage spice production, which is very prestigious, absolutely very difficult.
also
Now,
on
it
top
doesn't
of that, it is also sparking a conflict because again, that was under the purview of the Harkonnens originally.
are rival houses.
That's the big thing. They are both rival houses. So giving one to the other is guaranteeing bloodshed.
So, in the book, they do actually bring up the books associated with eras. So
Yep.
you have the Butlerian Jihad, which Brian Herbert's work, Reconstruction, and Herbert's work. Again, more prequel stuff. Then you get into the Ascension of Muad'Dib, which is Paul's Messiah name, and the various books associated with that. His son, Leto the Second,
Which, by the
the
way,
heir of
this is usually the point where people lose complete interest in the series, from what I understand. After, I think it's around Children of Dune that's the problem. It's not the original. The first Dune was pretty good. It's what kills it is around the aftermath of the ascension of the Muad'Dib,
then you have the Scattering, which is Leto dies, and Leto basically had strangled humanity for his for some sort of purpose he had. I'm not going to try to completely spoil it. Um, and then it ends with a renegade group of the Bene Gesserit called the Honor Matres coming back to the known universe and trying to take over. And that ends with Frank's work of Chapter House Dune. That was the last book he made for the series.
which, by the way, at this point, people usually stop giving a shit. Also, if you're wondering, yes, Dune was the heavy inspiration of what Warhammer 40K was, including a God
Warhammer,
Emperor
Star
of
Wars,
Dune.
with his
Star Wars not as much. Star
a little
Wars
bit.
Star Wars' inspiration is more from Hidden Fortress and other films made by that filmmaker.
Shane, so agents, they are more like not even like inquisitors. They're the Adeptus Terra. Bureaucrats.
Yeah, they're more bureaucrats. It's you go to the other great schools for that sort of thing.
That is also one of the things. In the setting of Dune, combat is progressed. It is. You think of the future, you'd have laser weapons, you'd have all this powerful stuff. Well, you see, someone invented something called shields.
Yep. And
And what?
you see them in actually Villeneuve's Doom does a pretty good job with it.
Here's the thing: if you fire a laser at a shield, it causes a nuclear explosion.
Yep.
But what can penetrate a shield is a slow object. So we're back to melee combat.
Which, eh, I don't know. It looks great in the movies, but it feels weird, you know? There's a
It
logic
worked.
to it, but I don't know.
Well, think of it this way. You know how in BattleTech there was the Succession Wars?
Oh yeah, where humanity collectively held an idiot ball so that the furries from beyond the stars can win.
Well, the first Succession War.
Yeah, where
You
they
see,
nuked everything.
imagine if that didn't happen. Instead, they acted, I guess, yeah, like the clans. Everyone acted like the clans, but really kept to the rituals because if they broke that, the planet would blow up.
So they also go into the histories of the past. The timeline is broken into two eras: before guilds and after guilds. This refers to the Spacing Guild, since the reason it's called after guild, Spacing Guild completely controlled all forms of space travel. It's called
So you
Old
had old,
Terra. Most of the territory is lost. Sorry,
um,
no, most of the history I meant. Sorry, not territory. They don't even know where it is.
which actually that is something. It's called the known universe. We have no idea if humanity has expanded beyond galaxy. 'Cause again, you can fold space, so you're not. I think you're going from one point to another instead of traveling that long distance. You're just swapping your position to that other position.
Which they go into further detail. So these originally there is known as the Old Empire, which is the original Terran structure. During this, it also created religion wars because in this time period, eventually Buddhism and Islam fused together.
Which how would that work?
I don't know. And the other thing that's really confusing is that from according to this timeline, essentially it's Islam that seems to have invented space travel. It's the Islamic world.
I feel like that is a callback to the golden age of Islam.
Yeah, but it was written in the 19 fucking 60s.
Herbert really liked the Muslims.
My guess is well, I mean the first book was written in the 60s. This is around the time of Nasser. So maybe my thinking is he thinks in this timeline Nasser actually succeeded in unifying the Arabic world.
Oh, and instead of Wahhabism
Like the
dominating,
Baathists actually succeeded in this timeline, or Nasser did.
not dominate, instead of the Wahhabis growing in influence, more moderate voices, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that would make sense if you come at it from that point of view. It's just kind of an interesting idea that for some reason Buddhism fuses with Islam. I mean, hypothetically you could, although it'd probably have to be Theravada, but the problem is Samsara kind of runs like you're running into different conflicting cosmologies.
And it is a weird thing. It's kind of like how in BattleTech, apparently a bunch of Jews converted to Christianity because of Israel. I'm not kidding. You can look it up on sarna.net. The
Because
weirder things.
because Israel exists or because it got blowed up.
No, I'm thinking because of what Israel did. Some, some. This would have been written, probably in the 80s or the 90s. disagreement over, I guess, some policy Israel did. Instead of, I don't know, going atheist, they decided, you know what? Christ is actually the savior of mankind.
You think
Some
Dubai
reason,
or the Saudis might bankroll it for the lulz? Well, yeah, with what money? Especially since they're starting to learn how not to manage it anymore. Although, to be
I'm
fair,
just
they are trying to go into tourism, so that they are trying to convert their basically petrarchy into something else.
imagining the biggest idea. They put Dubai in space.
I could see them being dumb enough to do that. The advanced state of technology destroyed the old political structure and essential ties to Earth. So, yeah. Basically, there was a massive religious schism, which is an interesting way for humanity to experience its first collapse. The Falfarluch's caste system arose during the Old Empire as humanity needed something or someone to focus on as a leader. It explained
This is
everyone's
our,
role.
yeah, so this is our feudalism. Then we
Uh,
have the thinking machines.
the
Uh,
Siridar fiefs were critical for success. All the factors worked to support others. This feels a little weird, but fair enough.
this is the Brian Herbert stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. This feels a little weird that it would. If you told me it formed in the aftermath of the collapse of the old empire, I'd believe you more. Like around the time of the thinking machines. If you told me that, I'd believe it. Thinking
And I've seen,
machines have impacted humanity's development for a long time. They've been around a while. Eventually, humanity integrated themselves into machines, and human machines became one. The Titans did this by placing their minds in the preservation canisters.
oh, this is the men with machines thing then.
They were incredibly powerful machine entities built along many forms. The size have scaled from almost human scales to the size of mobile vehicles to others giants. Oh god, the more I read this, the more I realize that 40K just fucking stole this whole hog. Holy shit.
This, though, I believe is the Simac thing. That is Brian Herbert.
Yeah, but still, unless he wrote it in
I
the
mean,
80s, that's pretty clear they still stole from him.
I mean, yeah, we do know that they were just straight up AI. The Men of Iron were not.
That's not what they're referring to. The like you forgot like they're called Titans.
Oh,
Titans,
oh,
dude.
oh,
Yeah, you know the College of
oh.
Titans? That's not something they came up with. They stole it from Brian Herbert.
Well,
Jesus
Brian made it
Christ.
after, so Brian stole it from them, actually.
Really? When did he publish this?
Uh, Let me look up the Dune books.
Because reminder, if it's before the 1990s, I'm going to say it's probably more likely that he did than they did.
Depending on when the term Titan exists, um, Chapter House of Dune, 85.
Then
Everything else,
that means I was correct because
that's Chapter House. That is Frank Herbert stuff. Prequels, 1999 to the 2000s.
then he stole it from them. Thank God. I was a little bit terrified.
I'm actually going to check the Dune wiki just to make sure Workshop is not going to try to sue anyone else.
I think they learned their lesson after getting their shit wrecked with Space Marines.
Let me see. Legends of Dune by Brian Herbert. Nope, Titans are entirely after. We
My
stole it from Games Workshop.
microphone's
They can.
starting to do feedback for some reason. I don't know. I don't know. Like your microphone hates you, man.
Hold on.
Time of Titans. So yeah, Brian Herbert stole this. So thankfully, it wasn't stole. It wasn't the other way around. I would have been more depressed. So
What
the
about
time.
now?
Hmm?
Is it better? Or
Oh God, no. I don't know how your microphone gets so weirdly distorted. I don't know. It's weird.
what now?
Nope. Did you try
Let's.
unplugging and replugging it in?
We'll try that.
While that's going on, let's continue. So basically, it's the time of Titans. Eventually, they make their thing. The League of Nobles to oppose the Titans as the Union solidified. They became a viceroy. So why does this happen?
Better?
Yes.
I gotta pray to machine spirits for this.
So the Titans took control, and then eventually these people overthrew the Titans.
Yep.
Unlike Cogitators,
Uh,
whose brains were in sensory deprivation, oh my
okay, they
god.
stole that from Warhammer.
They're stealing all this from Warhammer. Holy
That
shit,
is.
Brian. Titans became Cymex, nearly unstoppable, weaponized mechanical bodies capable of surviving for thousands of years. That's just men of iron. Holy shit.
We
Oh,
can skip this is all the prequel shit.
I know, but I wanted to show like the because it's lore ramblings. We're talking about the watchful, independent thinking machine of Erasmus in the service of Omni. Oh my god, they're just stealing more. Why do you keep doing this, Brian?
It's only fair.
So the Butlerian Crusade happens. They continue to battle the thinking machines. The sorceresses of Rasak began their breeding programs to create the ultimate psychic. This would become the foundation of the Kwisatz Haderach of the B'nai Gesserit Sisterhood. They also created the Holtzman effect, which is and spice melange as well.
That's when I believe is that's the shields.
Yep. So Butlerian Jihad happens. They overthrow the thinking machine, and basically humans have to fulfill the roles. Mentats usually do the equivalent. And blah blah blah. Fall of the thinking machine, birth of an empire. After the destruction, the leader Butler changed his name to Carino, and he became the first Padishah emperor. And the issued the Orange Catholic Bible, which, if you're wondering, it's a fusion of all religions. It's just the most common ones was Orange, which is a type of Buddhism fused with Islam, I think, along with the Catholic Bible, which is like some other weird religious combo. And the first commandment is, "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind." And
The
from
great.
hmm,
I was saying then the great schools are formed, and
yep. Also, the greater and lesser houses were formed because originally they were just the houses. Uh, so Carino up to the ones that sided with him. Then there's the great
mm,
companies that existed, like Fault Space, the Spacing Guild, Guild Peace.
and Chome.
Well, Guild Peace is actually something you need to have happen, or otherwise you lose access to space travel. Then there's the Great Convention. No house can ever use atomics against humans again. So they
Now
banned
this
nukes.
now this BattleTech stole from Dune. Ares Convention.
Yeah,
Basically, this is before the whole Succession Wars and the creation of the Star League. They said, okay, no more nukening.
I mean it makes sense if you kill so many fucking people via nukes.
Then, well, obviously, then in the Succession War, they broke that convention.
Las guns, shields in the Great Convention. So yeah, las guns. Fortunately, some players may still think a few suicide troops with las guns might end a rival. That would be wrong. So las gun shield interaction breaks the Great Convention because, of course, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big fan of the shield concept, but it looks good in the movie, so I'm not gonna complain. It looks better than it is. Just feels weird, you know. So,
Yeah,
I
I mean, I guess think of it this way. You know how in World War One we switched from massive waves of infantry to more limited engagements because we could now shoot people from farther away? Think of
uh,
that, but the opposite way.
personally, I just feel like Frank Herbert wanted to just what he wanted
Sword
to.
fights in space.
Yeah, he wanted to just kind of do what John Carter of Mars did, and damn the consequences.
What Star Wars would do.
I don't know.
Except
Star
the
Wars
Star
still
Wars.
has blasters.
No, but you have this. But the reason why you can have the melee fights is because of the space wizards
Well, also because lightsabers can deflect them because blaster bolts are slow enough you can.
and the Mandalorians. And they use them wrong.
Eh. Hey, did you know? Oh, speaking of which, did you know that Mandalorian 4, The Quest for Losing More Money, is being filmed in California because they're getting $23 million to extra tax credits for it?
Normally that normally they do that like in Canada or Georgia.
Nope, $23 million the state of California is giving them to film Mando 4 in California. It's also a way to force you to basically hire people based on their ethnicity because they couldn't put it into law, so they're using business incentives to force you to hire people based on ethnicity.
Maybe they could film in Skid Row, use that for Coruscant. Or Alhutta.
No, you got to pick the people that they want you to because, discriminatory hiring practices is totally fine in the business sense as long as no one talks about it.
They can't use that in Hollywood, otherwise they'd have to go to Toydaria.
$23 million just so they can lose something like $200 million in the box office.
No one get the Jewish jab there.
So delicate
Oh,
balance of power, blah blah blah. Sword masters. Oh yeah, a thing they mentioned that we didn't kind of skipped over is the Sardaukars, which are those
Sardaukar.
powerful, yeah, Sardaukars.
The Emperor's elite guard.
Yep. As for the Imperium today, it is currently under Shaddam Corrino the Fourth. The Empire has remained under control, but it's stressed, inefficient, and bloated. Essentially, the Empire is crumbling even before Paul does his thing. And
There's a
here's
nice.
the timeline of human history.
So 11,000 years before Guild is when Space Age takes place. So
Oh, and there's a revelation on how religion operates, aka Frank Herbert wanted to fuse Islam and Buddhism because he didn't fucking know what both of them were like, so just did it.
if this takes place in 10,000 AG, that's
That's
11,000.
20,000 years, actually.
Oh shit, we're in the Dark Age of technology.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, wait, wait, wait.
Oh, no, no, this happens, or then it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit.
No, no, you're about right. Age of Strife, because remember, after Leto the Second, everything collapses.
But well, we don't have the aliens or the psych. Well,
No, no, you have the aliens. Shai-Hulud.
oh, yeah, you're right.
There's aliens. After more than 10,000 years of Corino rule, then, the Imperium is poised between new and old. I mean, honestly, 10,000 years of just one noble house is quite impressive. Let's be fair.
That would be the longest lasting human government.
I mean, Egypt lasted a long time, but they also went between dynasties quite often.
I mean, what could you say is the longest lasting human government? San
Human
Marino?
government? One of the longest lasting governments in general probably goes to Japan. Because the Yamato dynasty was a thing for Japan for like 2,000 years.
What about the Romans, if you consider East as
No,
the
because,
successor?
well, if you're talking about the government structure, that lasted from essentially 300 AD to about 1204 when the Venetians sacked it.
I guess civilization.
Now you're kind of changing definitions because you're trying, like, it's not a civilization, it is legitimately a single state with the same government powers and properties as it had 10,000 years ago, which doesn't happen. Like, even the long running examples like Rome, no, they changed government structures quite often. By comparison, I mean, yeah, the Roman Republic lasted a long time, but it still died after less than 1,000 years. And the empire itself only lasted about, well, depending on your definition, anywhere between 1,000 years or only 500. And in Japan's example, yeah, the Yamato dynasty is old, but at the same time, technically the government structure has changed a lot. That's the thing. Like, yeah, Shane has it. Like Shane's pointing out the big thing. It's the same fucking dynasty. The only one I
Mm.
can think of that's lasted remotely that long is the Yamatos.
How long were they around for?
It's the empire. It's literally the Japanese emperors. They've been around since I think for over at least over 1,500 years. I think even longer actually. Let me look that
Unless,
up.
well,
They lasted a long time. They've been around a long time.
unless we find that descendant of the Davidic line.
Well, no, they're not in power anymore
Aye, right.
in Ethiopia. They're not in power anymore. All right, let me look up how old is the Japanese imperial family. I'm just curious for myself. Imperial House of Japan. It has been around. The first historical document was over 1,480 years ago. By mythical standards, it is 2,600 years old. So, yeah, this noble house has been around for 4 times as long as our longest ruling dynasty on Earth. I would say that's a massive success. So, overview of the Imperium. Besides the Padishah emperors, there's the Landsrat and the Great Conventions, the Triads of Powers, Landsrat alliances of houses major and minor, uh, the, and the Emperor and the Sardaukar, and the Spacing Guild.
You have the Spice Milan,
Oh, sorry about coughing into the mic like that. I actually was trying to mute it. Sorry. So yeah, the
which
Spice
exposes
Melange, that's critical.
longevity, enhanced awareness, and prescient visions of the future. It is addictive, withdrawals deadly. It can only be found on the planet Arrakis.
Which, if you're
Controls the
wondering why,
spice.
it's for plot reasons. In short, it can only tolerate conditions which have literally no moisture.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
Essentially, because you have complete control over space travel. Unironically, this is also why the scattering happens. They lose control over spice.
Actually, no, in that case, they don't need spice anymore.
Yeah, they're fucked.
The guild actually is fucked.
So the biggest challenge to cohesion is the Spacing Guild. These guys basically can crash the system, no survivors.
However, we would need to make sure that they get their access to spice, which is controlled by a noble house, which is in turn controlled by the emperor.
This is also why Paul Atreides was successful in toppling the Imperium. Because he was put on Arrakis, all you have to do is just take it and hold them out long enough so that they're fucked.
There's also the thing of CHOAM. CHOAM assesses all economic policies and trade. So let's say the guild manages to get an ally on Dune. Well, they're still human. Humans need to eat. They can just some can just maybe ban the guild getting any food and starve them out.
Yeah. Then there's the Sardaukar. This is the elite army of the Emperor. They
Any
essentially are what keeps the order.
anyone who pisses the emperor off, die.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, Sardaukar training. The best example of that is actually from Dune Part One. They did a very good job in showing how many cadets burn through the training. Literally, they a lot of aspirants die during the training.
And the blood is used to paint their armor.
Yep. They are they're well armored. They can wear whatever clothing and armor required. Uh,
They're also prisoners. They're all from
yes.
a prison planet. depend on one another for food and essentials? Absolutely.
The Sardaukar are not just soldiers, though. They're also skilled as espionage agents. They're very good at playing politics. Basically, they're the worst combination of an army with elements of SEAL team training, as well as covert operations and CIA work.
Goodness, they're not the Praetorian Guard, though. Be dealing with a lot of instability on our hands. That was the case.
Arrakis is an Achilles heel so massive it must have an attack every few years. I mean, Frank Herbert needed some way for Paul Atreides to not be murdered by the Sardaukar.
Here's the thing. How do you transport your forces to Dune? You need full space. You need the guild. The guild's not going to allow you to attack it because that will damage spice production.
So here's my next question, though. I think this is genuinely pretty stupid. Why didn't the Padishah just control Dune themselves? You know, like what every actual empire ever did whenever they had critical resources they needed.
I think because then the lower houses would keep fighting each other for prestige.
I feel like that's just a cope.
No, because that's I'll spoil this. That is the Carino's plan. The plan was to wipe out the Harkonnens and the Atreides by pitting them against each other over control of Dune. Wipe out two of your biggest threats, and then you put another puppet there.
I think that's a really okay. Let me I have a word for it. It's called retarded. This would be the equivalent of going, huh? I'm not a fan of these. Let's use Game of Thrones since I referenced it earlier. This would be like if Tywin Lannister's conclusion to dealing with the Rains and Tarbex was to have them fight to the death over Casterly Rock's gold mine. The thing that actually allows them to have the power they do.
Here's something else I could say. What if Carino's in charge of Dune and the Fremen launch an attack and there's a disruption in spice production? Cannot blame it on. You have to now blame it on the ruling house.
Here's my rebuttal. If you have an entire army of Sardaukar, you can just train them on Arrakis and then kill all the Fremen.
The Fremen beat them. That's
In
the
the
whole point.
books,
The Fremen,
well, yeah, in the books, with their savior, but then they also almost got wiped out. Remember,
but the Fremen still win. If they
barely.
would,
With an inspirational, intentionally genetically engineered savior figure. Keep that in mind. Also, one who united them. Keep that also in mind.
that was planted there by the Bene Gesserit.
Uh huh. See, the
Yeah, the Bene.
things needed to happen so that the thing could happen in the book so that the thing could happen.
I'd say this. Then the Bene Gesserit would prevent Carino from establishing power on there.
Even though he created them.
Uh,
After the
he,
Butlerian Crusade, he could have done whatever the fuck he wanted when he assembled his new empire.
I have no idea if he was under control of Dune at the time, though.
They were. That's one of the reasons why they were able to divorce themselves from thinking machines, remember?
Oh, no, I meant like what house had access to Dune was. I don't think Carino was from Arrakis.
Carino, though, was descended from the Harkonnens, which I think did have it.
Harkonnens had it.
Yeah, but he's also a Harkonnen. He literally was a Harkonnen. He just created his own house when he did his Butlerian Crusade.
Ah,
Do you know? I mean, technically, he had the name Butler, but he is descended from the Harkonnen. You get what I mean? Where you kind of sounds dumb the more you think about it.
yeah, but I can definitely see this being a bit of a political game of, oh, you hand this task off to somebody and you
Now,
can
now,
use it to
now, if
wipe
you
out this.
told me that over the course of because it's 10,000 years, you're gonna have terrible Padishah emperors. If you just told me like 3,000 years ago, Padishah Emperor Bertram III, also known as Bertram the brain damaged, sold off a lot of his own personal lands to the greater and lesser houses as essentially favors to win in his own little assassination campaign against his older brother. And one of the plum pieces was Arrakis, and this was like 2 or 3 thousand years before the events of Dune. You know what? I'd actually be like, oh, okay.
Could be. I mean, like you've played Crusader Kings.
Well, no, I played this thing called Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and there's this city called Marienburg, and a fat idiot of an emperor sold it to the burgermeisters and rich people of Marienburg as their own fief, so that he could have the money to do more hookers.
I'm thinking of
So you could
Crusader Kings.
unironically just have a really crappy Padishah emperor handed off to like one of the houses as like a sop.
Like you put a guy in charge in like Crusader Kings, you put a guy in charge of territory where the people in that territory would not like him, so they kill him, and you don't have to worry about assassinating the guy.
The problem is that the planet's also vitally important. So you're trying to sell it as like a white elephant, but that kind of doesn't work because it's legitimately the most critical part of your empire ever. It would have been
Let's
one
move
thing
on.
if there were like a couple of other planets that had spice melange, but they don't.
All right, let's move on then. We're at an impasse,
No, like I
and I
like
am
the
agreeing with you.
movies. I like the movies. I like the aesthetics, but I will question it.
Yeah, there's some odd logic to it, but then again, remember some of the prequel information obviously came from the sun, not from
Oh no,
something
he's
separate.
genuinely brain damaged, so you know. Life within the Imperium. The overwhelming majority living with them are subjects to the Frau Verluches and are such hereditary peasants whose destiny is to serve the government appointed by the House.
Look, serfdom,
Yeah, that sounds fun.
productive.
That's what the nobility and no one ever asks the peasantry what they think. The standard unit of currency is the solari. A denomination has been tied to the value of spice melange itself. It's enforced by the Choam and allows free trade everywhere, and eliminating money changing and conversion.
A unified currency.
The which, by the way, if you're wondering, unified currencies tend to have disproportionately negative effects on the least developed regions of an empire. It's not surprising that there's restiveness because of that.
So the common language is Gallic,
Galak, yeah.
which otherwise known as Basic or Low Gothic. It's your language.
Yep. And there's planetary variants exist in many other languages, but Galak is what's used. It's from
All
it
right.
also there are invented languages are commonplace like the finger signs of the Bene Gesserit, battle languages, and Chekbopsa, the hunting tongue used by the Fremen and the Bene Gesserit,
And ultimately, everyone is in their proper place and work to produce the goods that they are required to make. For
which
instance,
sounds awful.
Caladan produces rice and moonfish. Buzzell produces Sue stones, and obviously Dune is spice.
And if you're wondering, yeah, there's no middlemen. You just have to sell it to Choam.
They are
Basically,
the
the world
middlemen.
of Dune is a mafia state. Like it's all It's basically a mafia state or like a
Mafia,
syndicate state.
mafia state where government, transportation industry, and probably most of the educated class are all hooked on drugs.
Not only hooked on drugs, but colluding with and against each other, and there's no alternatives. There's no hope. You're just fucked.
So the imperial household is obviously House Carino. His personal state is beyond comparison. Um, he resides on Kitane, the imperial capital, and the Golden Lion throne. Then you have the noble houses, you have commoners, and you have slavery.
Which, yes, slavery made a
It's
big
back,
comeback.
everybody.
Well, remember the
And
founding peoples. It probably just came about again naturally.
although it is viewed by most of the Landsred as repugnant, so it's their peculiar institution.
Yeah, but they don't give a shit.
In this case, it seems to be more of a ransom, captive. That is. Oh no, Harkonnen does produce chattel slavery.
Unironically, they're
Of
trying to
course they
say
do.
it's bad, but like if it really was, you'd think most of them would have banned it by then.
Of course, Harkonnen practices chattel slavery.
Gotta make them as evil as possible. Technology is heavily restricted, and people prefer to do things the natural ways if possible.
So you do
Because
have
Frank Herbert
distrans.
liked to yell at clouds because he was an old man that hates things like the telephone and the television.
You do have recorded messages, but you also have film books, Shigawire readers, mimic encoders, Mimo coders, and other media players. Probably they have the Zune. Then
If
you
you're
have
wondering, communications is handled with either a communinet transceiver or a message called distrans, where a recorded message is stored into the memory of a living being and played back when desired. So you hired people to memorize your shitty Oh, imagine the scenario where you have a nobleman like sexting their lover. They have to send this poor motherfucker with all of the most depraved desires that they want to do. Like, there's this lovely 19th century sleazy letter where a guy talks about how he'll fuck the farts out of his lover. So imagine that letter. It's like 3 pages long, and the poor bastard has to memorize it perfectly in the
so
same incantations and the voice of the guy dictating it to him.
that's real.
Yeah, that's a real
Fuck the
love
farts
letter.
out of their lover.
Yeah.
Find that. That is hilarious.
And he actually made efforts to describe the different types of farts that would come out.
Though actually, this I don't know if it is or if not. It probably is a callback to know, oral cultures. Like, that's how the Jews used to memorize their religion. Through written stuff, it was entirely oral.
My rebuttal to this is you have this thing called pen and you're rich. Pen does
It
not
is.
have machine. You have to write with pen. Use pen
How did
on
it?
thing.
How did it know to get the ink out? Thinking machine. Use
You
proper. Use
use piece
quills.
of chalk. Use piece of chalk.
But then
No, no,
you
no.
have
I still love the mental image though of like imagine like all of the weird. Oh God, imagine like the equivalent of an internet forum where you basically talk have each like you have to have people talk to everyone in your friend group. Like you have to send this poor messenger across like half the fucking galaxy.
just to say, lol, you're gay.
Yeah.
That probably is how the Harkonnen Atreides feud started.
I love the mental image that this is one of the main hobbies of one of the Padishah Emperor. Like one of the Padishah Emperor's hobbies is legitimately just hiring people to troll people.
Just he sends it, makes it to Harkonnen, makes it look like it's from Atreides. Says you're fat.
You're fat, no one will have sex with you. I'm not
Uh,
fat, it's a viral problem.
I will have sex, and I do have sex. Come here, young boy. The
I,
man's a pedophile.
I'm I'm
Yes.
I'm kind of grateful that the David Lynch version doesn't have that, and instead he just has a
No,
weird obsession with hairless cats.
no, no, no. There is a scene where he is lusting
Oh
after a young
God, yeah.
slave boy,
You're
and
right. You're right. Never mind. I forgot about that
as,
one.
as he
Cause
pulls his heart plug out,
so
while
another thing about
Radon
household
is crushing
technology.
a bug juice box,
So another thing they got is the dispenser. This allows you to lighten any load.
or carry a load, such as a giant fat man.
Imagine spending your entire life quoting the seal copy pasta at random nobles. Well, it would be the Sardaukar copy pasta.
Did you say to me, you little shit?
I like the
Uh,
idea there's an entire lesser house who has a bunch of mentats whose sole job is to just say that fucking shit post everywhere they go.
actually, fun thing, if you do get it, that is the whole part of this game, is you are playing as a noble house. That could be your noble house.
So another thing about household technology is most food consumed within the Imperium is prepared by traditional means rather than through industrial methods. Many cooks even prefer to prepare meals by hand from natural ingredients. Technology does allow for food preparation to be done quicker, but the same techniques remain constant. So basically, it's almost like Frank Herbert wanted to write a medieval fantasy, but in space. If you think
Don't
about it.
say. Also, I'm just imagining it's like, sir, we could preserve this for a long period in a cold storage system. Fuck that. I'm eating that meat raw.
No, I just love the mental image that they forgot and don't remember how refrigerators work. That was technology that was deemed evil by the Butlerian Jihad. What do you mean? Wait,
Uh,
the meat doesn't go instantly rotten at this time of year? That is evil.
uh, Personal armaments.
Oh
You
yeah,
have
basically they use swords.
swords, daggers, garrots, hidden darts, needles, needle guns, slow pellet stunners, mauler pistols, and las guns, and the personal shield.
Yeah,
You
personal
do have,
shields basically unironically make it so that you just sword fight now.
oh god, industrial technology. Some level of manufacturing heavy mechanized work is handled by servers, which are little better than gear and clockwork driven automatons incapable of doing anything other than following simple orders. It's the fucking automata from Warhammer.
Yep.
It's actually more to the servitors without the human flesh.
So as for the great schools, B'nai Gesserit, we kind of covered them a bit. They're an all-female religious order. They serve as religious advisors. Also, unironically, Martin ripped this off. He just made them men and called them maesters.
Uh, oh, and they are so they're descended from a mix of Catholicism, Islam, Zen Buddhism, Judaism, Hinduism, and other religions.
Because of course all of these different religious doctrines can easily be fused together casually with no big deal at all.
You know what? Maybe BattleTech is the prequel to Dune,
I mean, if
and
you want, Starly could be the old empire.
oh no, not Star League. Isn't there a group in the Federated Suns that is trying to write a religious book that would combine all religions?
There is, but it's not going to matter because canonically the furries win. Furries win, become ill, whatever. I don't care.
Um, they then have the Missionar Protectiva.
Oh,
Uh,
also,
and then
despite coming from a variety of religions that treat promiscuity very seriously, yeah, the Bene Gesserit also serves as also sells them wives and concubines and shit. So of course you do.
the Order of Mentats, and I also realized another thing that takes from Dune. Fallout.
Well, I think the idea is mentat made sense because it sounds like a type of a drug. It does sound
Hmm.
like a type of drug, and it boosts intellect. It's a kind of nice little reference without actually being specifically
Yeah.
a theft. I think that's actually a good nod, a good little reference.
They drink the juice of Safu. What's the quote again?
Sappho juice
Let me.
castrates enhance their mental processing abilities, but marks their lips with a telltale stain. Yep.
Um, I meant the phrase they use.
I don't know, dude. Like my memory for things like specifics is bad. There's the Sook School, which are the medics. Doctors legitimately will not take a life. They are trained so hard to not take lives that they legitimately, from what I remember, like they even point out in the first Dune movie, like the doctor fakes killing someone because it goes against their beliefs.
No, not beliefs. They mentally cannot do it.
Yeah,
Then you have the Swords Masters of Ginza,
Evgenaz. Yep. These are the people that you hire to teach others.
and you have faith and religion. So these say most faiths from Old Terra have survived, but obviously the main one is Orange Catholicism.
Which, yeah, most within the Imperium follow this religion. It's named for the Orange Catholic Bible, which was developed after the Butlerian Jihad. It's a fusion of a variety of things.
A sort of a carefully curated mix of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. The Abrahamics still win out.
Yep. The primary commandment is thou shalt not disfigure the soul.
I also do believe freedom of humanity was a gift from God for doing His will and tearing down the enslaving machines. Uh, so
Oh,
since
by the way, another thing that that good old Martin stole from Herbert is uh the higher ups basically treat it like lip service because of course you do.
isn't that
Well,
always
remember
been
the
a
Faith
sort
of
of
the
a trope?
Seven, he basically shits all over it, and a big thing about Martin is, unironically, he tries to deconstruct every religion by saying that, oh yeah, having faith in this makes you retarded.
I mean, isn't that kind of that's a trope even in the Bible of the nobles paying lip service? I mean, fucking David
I know, but it's kind of,
killed a man so he could fuck his wife.
I know, but
Got a man.
like, it still also describes him as mostly righteous besides moments like that.
Um, Also, you have the Zen Sunni who uh, broke from the teachings of Mammoth, the third Muhammad, uh, and made its own faith.
Zen Sunni Catholicism was influential. The holy book that much of the Imperium holds sacred. Zen Sunni teachings were incorporated into Bene Gesserit's own Missionaria Protectiva. Zen Sunni scattered across the galaxy. And also, they are the core of the Fremen religion. You could merge a lot of weird religions, giving enough time after each merger, a bunch of weird things would get lost over time. The problem with that Squirrel Killer is that at that point, it's not even really the religion anymore. Like, legitimately, it would be so different from what you originally had.
Um, and to uh, say, repeat again, yes, Judaism technically does survive.
Yeah.
I'm reading from the Dune wiki that some of the organizations of Jewish origin includes the Diasporic Council of Rabbis, Talmudic Zalbar followers, Jerusalem Urbanite Citizens of Newark, Neo-Maimonidist Rabbinate, Torah Collegiate, also the Christian Zionist Pilgrims, the Hasidic Lutherans, the Hasid Islamic Union.
Yeah, they have a big problem with assuming that religions would fuse the way they do.
The Judaism has changed the least. Just
I would also have the argument and issue that one of the things that you tend to note is religions, they tend to fragment more often than they unify.
I find it hilarious that what did this be like? So that be like what 24, 26,000 years after the religion's been established?
Also, isn't that like way after Judaism declares the end of the world?
I maybe. Then again,
I know that I think there's a strain of Judaism that says like something along the
six
lines of,
thousand years.
yeah,
I
so
mean,
that's
we're
20,000.
about 300 years from that, so who knows?
So yeah, that means that Judaism's end of the world happened like 20 like 19,000 years.
But I am just imagining, even in the far future, you still have annoying Jewish mothers.
No, no, I love the mental image actually of one of the spice merchants on Arrakis legitimately just being a Hasidic Jew, and Paul has no clue what the hell this guy is. Like, why is he wearing like this hat? Like, it looks very different from Caladan, and it looks hell of a lot different than Arrakis. Although it kind of works for Arrakis because the brim keeps the sun out from his eyes.
And then he just breaks out into song from one of the most fundamental religious texts of his faith.
And
Fiddler on the Roof.
he has no idea what the hell he's saying because it's in some twisted version of Galak that he has no clue what it is, which is basically Yiddish version of Galak, Yiddish.
Yiddish. Perfect. Uh, but yeah, so you have other faiths. Actually,
Atheism in the Imperium, it's quite difficult to be an atheist here because the continued existence of humanity is generally taken to be existence of God. Despite the circular argument, this idea is ingrained in Imperial society. So yeah, atheism's not really a thing. Other faiths and precepts, while most cultures across the Imperium follow the main dictates of Butlerian jihad, there's a variety of smaller religions. Folk religions in the Imperium are no less complex, while many folk religions, they're not isolated as you think. There are many stories of pilgrims, such as the Zen Sunni. Other ones, mission blah blah blah. Come on. Oh, they don't mention the Jews at all. What the fuck?
the come on. Oh,
Cowards. So the Landsrat, this thing is ancient. There's a bunch of them. The main strength of the Landsrat is it's a counter to the Emperor, though its militaries would likely outmatch even the Emperor's Sardaukar. The thing is that if both of them fight, they know that they take down the other. Because the Landsrat has a larger military than the Emperor, but the thing is, the Emperor's army is so good that even if you kill the Emperor, you're basically bled out. And it requires most of the great houses to agree with you. The unofficial motto of the Landsrat is a place for every man, and every man has a place. Because fuck mobility. House is not just the head noble, it's including any spouses. It includes allies, employees, servants, inhabitants of their ancestral lands, and their slaves, if any.
you have the title head of the household who owns Chom shares. Uh, you also have concubines, and obviously married spouses. Heir of the house, the eldest son or daughter, and is or direct relation. Subsequent noble children are essentially of noble status, but have little else attached to their name. Uh, they're primarily useful for making alliances through marriage,
Yep.
and many enter services into one of the great schools, or just chart their own course of life.
Also,
Uh,
the leader of the house might abdicate or be killed. Sometimes the emperor can intervene and put someone else in the house in control.
he
Landsrat might also do so.
cannot strip a title of their nobility, except in the most extraordinary of conditions. Because obviously the Landsrat would rebel if the Emperor could just replace any noble he wanted to. The most recent of instances is House Vernius of Ix, forced to become renegade when they ran afoul of the Emperor because of development of technology that violated the Butlerian edicts. They fell from grace, but they petitioned to restore their status. It's now more of a technocrat confederacy than a true house.
Also, a lot of noble houses have to deal with. It's legitimately. You don't usually have open wars. It's more assassin wars.
You follow the forms of Canly, the art of vendetta.
Yep. The way a house appeals when its rights have been violated is submitting a bill of particulars to the High Council. Um, in this case, a judge of the change is appointed, and at that point, it's to preside over the process. Banishment
The judge of
is
the change.
genuinely an outcome that can happen.
Then you have the noble houses.
You know, the more I
Obviously, you have
read this,
House.
the more I can see where Martin stole from. Because doesn't this
You,
feel an awful lot like Westeros if you think about it, including the long running, damn near impossible to exterminate noble houses,
uh, I would say actually
including the
with
Shadow
Martin,
War and schemes?
there's a lot more cultural development. Like you can clearly see how over time different cultures emerged and mixed with either the original inhabitants or invading cultures such as the Andals.
Well, yeah, because Martin decided to focus on the characters more. Because he wasn't writing a story, unlike Frank Herbert, who wrote a story. He wrote a very strong story focused around Paul. So why would you focus outside of Paul and his confidants? You know?
So you have the houses. You have House Carino.
But yeah,
House
there's the
Harkonnen.
Imperial House, Great House, Majors, and Minors. Sorry about that.
You have House Harkonnen, ruling Gidi Prime,
So the thing about Giedi Prime is, by this point in time, it is done.
is
The
worse than a shithole.
Because there's nothing left for it to harvest.
Which version of the Harkonnens do you like more? Do you like the orange-haired ones or the pure white bald guys?
I honestly think the gingers have a little more personality to them.
I do like the uniforms of their soldiers, which are just guys in hazmat suits.
Yeah, I
It,
think that is one of the cases where I do prefer the one with Patrick Stewart holding a pug.
uh, there is a fun call out in the first Dune movie of Villeneuve when they are recovering Baron Harkonnen. Guys going in there are wearing the same uniforms.
Which is fitting.
I I don't know if yeah, in that case it's appropriate. I don't know if they actually took the same uniforms, but it's a nice homage.
But yeah, Harkonnens are well known for being backstabbing fucks. They're very good at shadow warfare, and they are known for being quite grim and horrible. Then there's Atreides, which they are the protagonist's house. They genuinely had a long-running history of being reasonably honorable, well respected,
Oh,
and
they straight up claim ancestry from King Agamemnon,
yes, they do.
and they produce rice.
That's their main value is they are a farming and fishing world.
He is
When
well liked in the land's rot, and his influence is growing very great.
hmm This is actually why the Emperor personally has him get killed, because sending him to Arrakis was a death sentence on purpose. He was trying to basically cripple the house.
Harkonnens owned it before, and they sabotaged production.
And they also mention Ix and Theliax. These are the houses that essentially play around and ignore the edicts when it's possible.
Ix straight up. This is not even like the ad mech. This is if the ad Adeptus Mechanicus was just using abominable intelligence. It's right out. The Talaxlu are cloners. Uh, Manipulators, they are the ones that create the face dancers, which are shapeshifters. They look like anyone.
They
They
also
also
can
produce
create,
bolas.
which are basically clones of dead people. Again, Choam, Combine, Honet, Ober, Advancer, Mercantiles. Spacing Guild it seems powerful, but these guys have a lot of soft influence because these are where you run through your economy. I noticed a common theme in Frank Herbert's book structure is it relies too much on one single failing point.
I think that might be the idea.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the idea because again, it relies specifically on their shares being worth anything, and the fact that the Spacers Guild likes them. You know,
Well, I mean, their shares are mutually beneficial. In order for them to benefit, everyone's production has to be increased. No one's going to fight each other if they stand to lose.
also
Production's
shares are
lower.
hereditary. Shareholder houses traditionally have valuable commodities, which allows them to actually have shares. Funnily enough, one of the duties of a noble house is to actually provide financial reports and accountings, which is actually one of the reasons that the Harkonnens got kicked from Arrakis, because they were cooking the books and not doing as well as they should have.
Cooking the books, they were just taking from the top.
They were taking from the top blatantly,
What
and
would
the
you
thing, and
expect?
that's
The
a
fucking
no-no.
Harkonnen is in charge of this.
And that is a no-no. Those who have been found committing minor acts of embezzlement or simply bad accounting will usually be fined. Severe penalties can include garnished profits and oversight by outside parties, which is similar to what happened to Arrakis.
Not Nito. At that point, it would probably be better just to make a new thing. Uh,
You talking about religion, or are you talking about the about something else?
he's talking about products, which probably that might be how new houses are born.
So the board of directors is one of the most powerful organizations. Seats on the boards are very coveted. This is also a way to basically houses compete heavily to see who's on the board. Directorships are granted by the emperor. So essentially, to become a director of this of Choam, you kind of need to have the emperor on side.
Breathe in deep and start kissing that ass.
Directorships are usually hereditary, but every now it's uncommon for new directors to be invested in it. As for how important melange is, yeah, legitimately, it's either that or the entire humanity dies. Well, not dies, but essentially fragments and falls apart. Unironically, a single decigram, decigram, he says deca, but that's not how you actually spell. It, I think he's going for dessa,
I
which
think it's
is a
probably supposed
tenth of a gram, ranges as high as over 500,000 solaris. Which I don't necessarily know how expensive a Solaris is, but if it's in the equivalent of dollars, that's quite impressive. Economic control of a spice is invariably granted to a Chom director at the whim of the emperor. So the emperor basically gave it to, which kind of explains it. Atreides was given it after Harkonnen fucked up and embezzled too hard. Also, Chom is quite large and clunky. There's a lot of
to
embezzlement that's expected, but you have to not be too obvious.
creative accounting practices.
Yep.
There's
Hey,
also the fact that
Spacing
smug.
Guild, which shows you what happens if you take too much spice. Look at him.
I hope they show that in the new movie.
So
I
all
want to. I
houses
want to
have
glimpse of the
some
giant
means.
fish baby.
Yep. All houses do have the ability to travel in space, but if you need to get to other systems, that's where the Spacing Guild kicks in. So the Spacing Guild
And I
has a
mean,
lot of control. It's almost as old as the Imperium itself, and it's been tied since its foundation. But Lyrian
it is
edicts prevent the use of thinking computers.
it is the navigators from
Hmm.
Warhammer.
To the point where the navigators are based on what happens if you take so much spice.
They become mutants.
Spice and its
Their
properties
eye,
changes fundamentally and Guild adapted to its use, just as its
their
navigators
eyes,
mutated to meet the needs.
their eyes take on the characteristic blue within blue. Their heads grow, features become grotesque, temples swell, limbs extend, reposition, and fingers and toes grow to incredible lengths. Fins develop between their digits. Voices change dramatically. Described as fish-like. Uh, I'll take the third eye that when people look at it, they see into the warp over this any day.
Oh yeah, especially since it has the same effect as Space Marine training. You have to be as a child. Oh, I thought Deca would have to have been spelled with a K though, because Desi. Ah, it's the A. I thought Deca though was spelled Deka. That's why I was confused. Like I wasn't trying to be silly. I always thought Deca was spelled with a K, not a C.
Oh, guild politics.
Yeah. Oh well.
Uh,
Anyway, yeah. Spice mutations. Yeah. Spice mutates you pretty badly. And once the psychic and mental benefits of extreme spice usage were discovered, yep, they became essential. They can essentially use prescience to plot a course suitable and safe for faster and light travel. because that's the point of the navigators, and that's the point of the spacing guild. You can technically do faster than light travel, but the odds are pretty damn good that you're going to slam into something and explode. What these guys allow you to do is predict the actual paths that you need to take and send them in, so to speak. And you kind of need to do that because you banned thinking machines, you fucking idiots.
Well, that means technically, if they had the thinking machines, just ends up like Star Wars.
Yep. Also, they have a cult of secrecy because you kind of don't want to show the fish monsters that you've created. Guild agents are everywhere because, again, they basically control whether or not the Empire exists.
And they have their highliners, which are those big ships.
Yeah, they're the big tubes. Space travel outside the guild. While the guild controls all fold space travel, they don't control all interstellars. There's a few independent ships that have FTL travels. Oh, and if you're wondering, they call it the known universe because it is larger than galaxies.
Right? Yeah, so we have expanded beyond the galaxy.
Yep.
I guarantee you nobody knows where everyone is.
There's a reason why we lost Old Terra.
Look,
There's hmm?
we might not even be in the Milky Way galaxy.
So a common thing is when you're going in transit, you stay dark. As for space travel, it's pretty casual. There's not really much to see. And let's go on to the Order of the Mentats. These are the guys that basically take cracks so that they can actually think really good.
The juice of Safu. Juice of Safu.
Crack. Crack
My lips
rock.
become a stain. Stains become a warning. It's by the will of mind. It is by my will alone I set my mind in motion.
Yay, space crack. So yeah, mentats are a thing because once you get rid of thinking machines, you need people who basically are like Rain Man to actually do all of the calculations for you.
So it's just an entire army of autists.
It's it's an entire army of autists who have spent their entire life learning how to count and to think about a certain topic.
Paul is actually a mentat.
The Order of Mentats start to train recruits from childhood. Yep. Basically, it's similar to space. Have you noticed that 40K has stolen the from childhood training of a lot of stuff from Dune? Because you kind of need to particularly destroy them.
Yeah, but I mean, in these cases, they're probably voluntary. 40K, they just kidnap.
Well, I mean, they need to do something.
Yeah.
So what they then do is, in adolescence, they force them to continue to use their mentat abilities while traumatizing and/or threatening to kill them.
What's 2 plus 2, motherfucker? Give me the answer, I'll beat the living shit out of you.
So eventually, though, they're given a choice where they're told the truth about their training. I don't necessarily know why that they are given this choice. Is it because it's warning them that they might have to take crack?
Maybe. It might be that, oh, this will be your entire role in life forever.
I mean, it's not going to matter because in Dune you literally have no flexibility in social upbringing.
I mean, I do, because, let's see,
They describe it
this,
quite strictly. Yeah, there's nothing you can do. You're just fucked. You're fucked. So, becoming a mentat, the student who decides to continue receives the final years, which forever changes them. Uh, they're taught a specialty in demand at the time. Highest scoring student of each class can choose the specialty they desire. And the most common ones are assassination, strategy, and archiving. There's also twisted mentats. They possess all of the abilities of other mentats, but operate without any moral or ethical constraints. As for mentats in the known universe, yeah, they're a big deal. Then there's the B'nai Gesserit. These people are well, yeah, they're part religious sisterhood society. They're part social orchestrators. They essentially guide humanity from the shadows. And in the books, they essentially kill billions of people because they want it to happen.
We also have the weirding way, uh, the Pranab Bindu, and the ability to isolate the movements of their individual muscles. They also have the voice, which is psychic powers.
Yep, unironically, they have the ability to kill you with a touch, or read your
Avoid
minds, or destroy you with your minds. They can also
and
control
prescient
their own chemistry,
and prescience. I believe they can see into the past.
at least somewhat.
Because Paul's thing is that he can see both the male and female halves of his past. The Bene Gesserit can only see into the female halves.
All I do know is that these are just absolute schemers. They also have
Um,
stuff like the truth trance and the agony. If you can neutralize the poison and live, you can become a reverend mother. If you don't, you're just dead.
and then there is the classic litany against fear. Must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I'll face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. When it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. The fear has gone, there will be nothing. The eye will remain.
You say that, but you know what I'm just envisioning? These would be so fucked if they went to if they were stuck in 40K. Like, you imagine the damage an enslaver would do to them.
They're psychic, but they're not psychers.
That's not gonna matter. There's gonna be demons that whose whole existence is going to be just to fuck with them.
Unless the voice can affect them.
Probably. No, I mean, like, let's be fair. If you have psychic powers at all, that means you probably have enhanced psi potential anyway. Let's be fair.
So, okay, I wonder how much stupid in this world building is a result of having to fill in the gaps to make an RPG.
Oh no,
Oh,
they're
I believe.
using Brian Herbert as much as Frank Herbert, so some of the dumber stuff is from him.
Yeah.
Like, Dune is actually reasonably filled out. You can easily do an entire series about it. It's just a lot of the dumbest shit from it comes from Brian Herbert, his son.
So they're going over. I feel like
We
in most
already
of this.
covered the doc. The
Yeah,
Bene
I
Tiliax is
would
the genetics. Let's move
I
on.
would say since it's been over an hour to actually skip more of the and
Because
get
we
to
already covered these guys, so let's go over the
get to the
planets.
game.
Really? We don't want to
Yeah,
talk about some of the planets we got here?
I mean, because they have like a bunch on Dune itself, but yeah, we can go over it.
Because I mean, the first planet is Arrakis itself,
And it's a
which
desert planet.
yeah, it's a desert planet. It's called. They actually have habitability classes ranging from class 1 to 5. Class 1 can't sustain human life. 5 easily sustain human life without preconditions. 4 is similar. 3 is humans can survive with environmental precautions. Arrakis is class 3, which ain't great, but it's also not too bad.
Wait, its star system is Canopus.
Yep, Canopus.
Oh, that means.
Yeah, the hippies took over.
And it's full of sand.
Yeah,
And
it also has essentially no water. They also have what's called sand plankton and sandworms.
desert hawks, desert owls.
Yep, it's extremely arid. There is almost no moisture at all. Yeah, there's no rainfall. There's nothing to sustain varieties of life. Plant lives are all adapted to most inhospitable of climates. Most of these plants are found in other worlds. There's not many. There's only the creosote bush. In terms of fauna, there's the kangaroo mouse, but the most well, and the desert hawk and owl.
Oh,
But the most
that was in the
important is the
movie.
sandworm. And sandworms are pretty fucking terrifying. They're over 400 meters long. And since they hunt by sound, it's not uncommon for you to lose mining equipment by these guys fucking eating it.
The only way to, I guess, not be detected by them, you have to walk without rhythm.
Yep. They can. They're also called sandworms because besides eating other things, um, on top of that,
You know what I
they.
realized, man?
Hmm,
You know what the best way for the best organization that would probably survive on Doom then? Ministry of Silly Walks.
yeah, unironically. But yeah, sandworms also, besides eating humans and everything they can, they eat sand a lot. That's
They
actually
love it. It
partially
gets into
how.
everything.
Yep. Also, funnily enough, sandworms are very sensitive to water. Unironically, you can actually kill them by just raining on them.
They have the same illness as the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah, they essentially dissolve and melt.
But it really is. I'm melting. I'm melting.
Yep. They also give you the warnings of what the hell is going to happen. Yeah. Basically, there's 5 stages. If you don't notice anything by stage 5, you're fucked. And as for the cities of Arrakis, essentially they're designed to be regions that are somewhat safe, mainly in the rockiest areas. And there's 2 major cities. There's Carthage and then there's Arrakeen. As for politics, it was owned by the Harkonnens, who essentially did a lot of damage to the Fremen.
Oh, they explain why the why Carino's not in control of it. The Landsrat explicitly refused to allow the Imperial House to control Arrakis. Only the
Ah,
Emperor is allowed to choose who administers the planet,
okay.
because all property in the Imperium is owned by the Emperor himself.
I mean, I would. Here's my problem with that. Yeah, yo, I just saved you from thinking machines. Do you want me to let the robots kill you and then win myself?
Squill Killer. Wait, repel someone with squirt bottle?
If you had enough water, yeah, that would spook them.
BFG 9000 Water Gun Edition.
If you're wondering, sandworms are critical for how spice melange is made. So, if you do that, you basically kill all of society. So,
But a
okay,
certain War Emperor does.
yes, he does because he's a piece of shit.
It is forbidden to stockpile melange, but everyone does it anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, so essentially the Emperor is not allowed to. I can maybe understand why, since it would give him too much influence over the Space Guild, but the problem is the balance of power doesn't make sense since he saved them from a robot revolt. What the fuck are you gonna do? Like,
Well,
you get what I mean?
it's in human nature to politic.
I mean, he could have just left them to die. I mean, that could be his response.
I mean, then what is he an emperor of?
A centralized state, at least a more centralized one, of people he can pick from a more loyal perspective.
Yeah, but is that fun?
It would make more sense. Like I
This is
said, I
humanity
think
we're
it would have
talking
made more
about.
sense if he lost the rights to, if like one of the Padishah emperors lost the rights to it a while back. Like, because it's 10,000 years old, the state. You could have easily had the state defragmentized. Like you could have had the noble houses gain more power over time.
That would
Sandworms
have
are
made more
big
sense.
cats that dig confirm. Oh, that's really funny. I'm just envisioning like a giant sandworm rolling over so it can get more sun. Like you see this 300-meter long monstrosity just flop over on its side so it can take some sunlight.
Opinion so far? I love the world building.
Oh, I love the world building too. I like to shit on it as much as I love it.
Uh, so you have the Fremen, descended from the Zensuni Wanderers.
Yep.
Uh,
And these are kind of more the indigenous people of the planet since they were there much longer.
Again, space Bedouins.
On top of that, they have a variety of things like the still suit, which is designed to keep all of their water and basically recycle it, which means that you drink your own piss and sweat and shit.
Again, Warhammer ripped this off.
They also have a thing called, they don't mention the still tent, but they also have a needle designed to suck away all of the moisture from a corpse.
Moisture farmers then?
Well, yeah, because you need all the water you can get.
I didn't realize Star Wars stole this. Fucking Tatooine.
Yeah, but they don't have sandworms. Like, come on, man. The desert planet
Sarlacc.
motif is
What about
definitely
the
from Dune,
Sarlacc
but
pit?
yeah, but it don't move. It's fine. So
When was it written why
anyway,
the planet was taking control? I may have been a later thing.
wait, when was it written why the planet was not controlled directly? I get the feeling that what happened was either Frank Herbert or his son Brian. Someone asked that question. Someone pulled a me and was like, "Wait a minute, why would the Atreides have the ability to even have the fucking planet to start with? Why did the Harkonnens have it?"
Well, you
Wait,
see, whenever there's this big political question, Wizard did it.
like here's the difference between Frank Herbert and the difference between him and George R. R. Martin. Martin would criticize Tolkien for Aragorn's tax policy, ignoring that he's basically taking command of a kingdom who was at rock bottom, because Gondor was massively underpopulated. And also Tolkien explained what each region of Gondor was relatively known for. Like they have an entire area called the Pinath which is known as the Greenlands. That's where the Green Knights of Gondor come from. It is known primarily because of its wide and peaceful fields, which implies it's a farming community. Then you have the Ringlow Vale, which is known for its woodworking ship and valleys. And then you have the Vales of Lossarnoch, which is where you get a variety of flowers, herbs, and also a lot of farming. If you look actually into how Tolkien describes regions of the world, he does describe how they make their fucking money. As opposed to George R. R. Martin, who couldn't even figure out what the fucking value of a dragon is, and the value of coinage inflates and deflates randomly as he needs to. But anyway, back to Martin. So here's the thing, right? The world building Martin does usually is to the disadvantage of it. Like, why does the king do this? It's so that the fire and blood civil war can happen. Meanwhile, with me pooping on Frank Herbert, I'm like, why did he do that? There's at least a decent logic to it because you could argue that during the Butlerian Jihad, he had to compromise with the great houses to win. So that's why he couldn't get control over Arrakis. There's also the idea that you have 10,000 years of history. You could easily just have it be that one of the Padishah emperors had to give up Arrakis. Like you could just say like 3,000 years after the founding of the Imperium, Emperor Goobagloob the Dumb had to give it up because otherwise the entire Landsrat was going to revolt. Like you
Yeah, we
get what I
have that.
mean?
Yeah, that in Warhammer.
Yeah. Like
Multiple times where the Imperium collapses.
so you could unironically have an explanation,
So back to the Fremen, you have the Siege. Uh,
which is kind of
the,
it's their literal encampments, it's their safe spaces.
have their beliefs, which is around the coming of the Mahdi, which actual word.
Yeah.
Um, Chris knife. Uh, their desire to commit jihad, because remember the Zen Sunni were kicked out of pretty much every planet, so they want revenge.
Yep.
Which actually this explains why the jihad takes place. I have a feeling that the whole Zen Sunni thing is from Ryan. Makes complete sense after thousands of years of story of, oh, we've been kicked out of this place, this place, this place, and this place, and we want to punish them.
Also, there's others in Sunni communities too. So It makes a lot of sense how Paul actually had the ability to rally a massive revolt.
And then you have again the Chris knife and Shai-Hulud.
So, Chris knives are ceremonial knives. It's made from the tooth of a sandworm and spawned to its user. Shai-Hulud is their term for sandworm, and they see it as a
For
god.
the god of the sandworms.
Means Father Eternity, the Old Man of the Desert, or the Makers.
Um, and again, you can ride on a sandworm.
It's not a great idea, but yes, you can. The next planet they talk about is Caladan, which is actually the original planet of the Atreides. It's their main planetary holding. It's an ocean world. And they go a little bit into Caladan. They're sea people by birth. They're known for fishing. It's a really nice planet. It's rain and water is its main thing. It's known for its tourism. And then there's Ancient Castle Caledon, which actually, in the movies, I believe they actually had House Atreides collect old Greek ruins, or at least they have a few remaining Greek ruins that they brought with them into space.
Which again, reflecting the fact that they're supposed to relate to Agamemnon, makes sense.
As for Giedi Prime, it's a class 4. It's run by the Harkonnens. It's known for its industries mostly. It's very heavily industrialized. Giedi Prime basically burned through its resources because the Harkonnens are essentially from their founding are greedy. They destroyed their home system's ecosystem. It's still survivable without the hazmat suits, but it's not pleasant. And at this point, they essentially are the middlemen. They have to finish the products imported from other worlds, which is one of the reasons why they were so obsessed with taking and keeping Arrakis because, well, that allows them to get much more money than it is just finishing products. It's essentially an industrial wasteland at this point. Then there's the noble house Vernius's homeworld, Ala Corpus.
X.
Ix, I mean, 9. Uh,
It is called Ix.
yeah, Ix. It's very competitive. It's mainly a scientific inhabitants. Then there's
It
Junction.
looks like it's an Ecumenopolis, a giant city planet.
Let's see. It's the most technologically advanced planet in the known universe. Culture, environment. The surface of Ix is more than a scattering hollow town across the globe. Yeah, it's an entire city planet.
Except they all live underground.
Hey Jim. I'm waiting for the mechanics section of the book. Well, you know what?
Yeah,
We covered a few planets. Let's just kind of hop
and
over
let's.
to there. Yeah.
So
So let's start with chapter 3, creating your house.
so the game plays. You're playing as a house,
It's
either a nascent house, minor, major, or great house.
it kind of reminds me of the A Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game in that regard. Although if you want a slightly simpler system, I'd probably go with this because if you're wondering, Modiphius uses 2d20, which we'll get into that proper when we cover the mechanics itself. But essentially, it's an interesting system because there are things called, I think they have advantage dice, but they also have what's called threat dice. And you can
Yes.
hand off threat to the GM. Basically, you're giving GM permission to fuck you later on. And we'll get into that. But anyway, constructing a house. So how does a house exist? There's 4 types. There's nascent houses. You just became a house, which that can happen. You're
Minor.
Yep, minor houses. They're much more. They're longer running. They usually have a stronger tradition, but they're not very impressive.
They could be a minor house on a planet, or sort of just controlling their own planet, but they haven't really expanded. Unlike a major house, which would control an entire planet, have a very uh, important or powerful resource.
Yep. So a minor house traditionally they own a moon, or they are only partial owners of a world. If a world only has minor houses, they tend to fight to see who becomes the house major. Major houses always have at least a planet, and they're reasonably powerful enough to play the great game. And then there are great houses, which are the largest of them. House Atreides, for example, is a great house. as
and
is the Harkonnens,
each house, obviously the bigger house, greater the house, the greater the threat. Uh,
which determines how much the DM can fuck you.
and it's per player.
Oh yeah,
So
makes sense. The DM wants to have the ability to fuck you.
then you have your starting domains and your areas of expertise.
So what are
So
domains? Yeah, you have a bunch of these. These are where you're famous for. This is
domains are
what
like
you're
your
best at.
territory. Expertise is obviously what you're best in. So machinery, produce, expertise in people, workers, or understanding.
Yep,
S-
farming,
So,
industrial, conley, which is assassinations, rule of
so
assassination.
Adam, if you were to make your own house, what would you
Well, I mean,
choose?
given that, like, what I'd probably do is I'd start off for me. I would go with a house minor. Like, it's a relatively minor house. It owns one of the two moons of a planet. It is subservient to a house major, uh, which is allied. Let's just because I think it's fun. They're allied with the awful monsters that is House Harkonnen due to a debt they owe them. That
I like it.
they had to make this debt, otherwise they faced near extinction. It was a Faustian bargain, and they're tied to Harkonnen, unfortunately.
And I probably would say we'd be. Well, what would the name of the house be?
Um, let's see. I would say
House Tomlinson?
no, 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 no. I don't want to base it on. I don't want to base it on a stupid child. Fuck. I'm gonna go with because it's something that you don't see too often. I am going to go with House Quan. They're of Vietnamese origin.
Oh,
They are of
so what?
Vietnamese origin. They are known primarily for their great murals and sculptures. So their main talent, one of their main talents, is actually art as their primary. They're also surprisingly well known for their espionage because it's not uncommon for traveling artists under their employ to feed information back to them, which they sell at a price, usually to their major house or to some of the other minor houses that they are either affiliated with, or they just sell it to the highest bidder. They're both
I like
artists
it.
and info brokers. As
So
for
you
their
could have.
religion, they're Orange Catholic primarily.
Well, it's more, I think, for that case, that's like you could be a religious house.
Yeah. They're not known for their science. They're known for their art and their espionage. As for their homeworld, the moon they are on is actually a class 4. It has a somewhat thick atmosphere, which occasionally, when it gets particularly hot, you have to stay inside. Otherwise, you cook to death in the hot and muggy swamp planet they're from. Like we're talking forests of mangroves, salt marshes. It is probably something between 80% water to 85% water. It is known for it's known for its tropical storms, and its atmosphere is 1.5 times thicker than Earth's,
Hmm.
which means that when humidity is high, it can be a bit difficult to breathe, and it gets so hot sometimes that the water gets tepid. It actually can cook skin if you stay in it too long.
Like this.
But
So
during the
now that
winters, falls, and springs, it's not as bad. It's just similar to the bayous of Louisiana.
so now I'm imagining they have a they're Vietnamese, but they have a Cajun culture. Maybe that
As
they're
for their banners and
orange.
arms, their main symbol is actually a particular native type of fish for the area. It actually kind of looks like it's actually a large eel that has slight dragon features. Not quite, but a little bit. And it
You're gonna
is
make a an AI art of this and put it on the Discord, aren't you?
at some point I will if I can remember House Quan. Their main sigil is actually a shining red eel that is leaping out of water. And as for what it looks like it's doing, it looks like it's trying to eat a star. Like it's leaping out of the water, and you see its teeth almost trying to eat a shining star in the sky. and their main colors are red and white. So
So
as
now that we have the house traits, we now have the individual characters.
Yep.
Is you play as characters of the house. They're the ruler, consort, be the physician, the heir, a marshal, Bene Gesserit, a spy master, etc.
So as for the ruler's title is Marquis because I like the Cajun element. I'm thinking part Vietnamese, part French.
Okay.
So you got a Marquis. As for
That
the
makes a lot
major
of sense.
house that's owing money to the Harkonnens, they would use the term Duke because they are actually more French than Vietnamese. I like the idea that basically this is like a weird scenario where you have like a mixture of Vietnam, France, and just because I like it, Senegal. So as for the ruler, let's see. This current leader.
These are just the examples of
Okay.
responsibilities.
Okay.
Don't need to detail it all out.
Yeah. They're
Uh,
not expensive enough to have a Doctor of the Sook school yet. Although they yet it's just they're not poor enough. It's just those things are expensive, man. They're getting there though. They're preparing to get one because they're worried about their heir. There we go. As for the enemies, their rival house, I'd have to roll for it, but let's go with rival. They're rivals over the rights of the moon because centuries ago they basically had a big competition over artistic merit, and the winner who pleased the Duke enough would have gotten the moon. House Quan won, but their rivals, House, just because I think it's hilarious, let's name it Gaston after the titular character from Beauty and the Beast. House Gaston has not been pleased with it, even though they did eventually get their own rather nice holdings on the planet, some of the nicest parts of the planet. So basically, it's a desire to see who can tear down the first quickest.
so to then the characters. So obviously you make your character, and way uh, tests work in this game is you roll a 20-sided die,
Hmm.
either from 2 to 5 to gain a success. Basically, you have roll equal or less than a target number. Get your target number by adding up your skill you're using, between 4 and 8, and the drive, which is what's driving the character's action, and that's also between
And you
4 and
roll
8.
under. That's why it's called 2D20.
So you can roll under 8 or under 8 up to under 16. Uh, any one rolling a 1 counts as 2 successes. Rolling a 20 counts as a problem or complication.
Starting to lag out there on your end, man.
Let me reset.
His microphone hates him. The Butlerian Jihad is progressing well. So, as for the leader of House Quan, I'm envisioning their main drive is, let's see,
Better.
that is better. Oh, it's each of the five drives. I would say for the leader, just because I feel like it, their main drive is actually their first drive. Just because I think it's funny, should is it's a hard fight between faith or truth, with duty being second, justice being third, and the last one being power because they're more of an idealist. Uh,
And then you have your drive statements.
yep,
Uh,
which just give you some ideas on
and
what you would describe.
I do believe the drive statements affect maybe some bonuses you might get, like
It
extra die
essentially
or
can improve it because if you're fulfilling exactly the role, I think you get a slight benefit. As for ambitions, since I'm going with with either truth or faith, I'm going with probably I think the better one would be just because I feel like it. I think we're gonna go with truth because so in this case they're trying to unlock knowledge or expose lies.
I'd see try to escape the debt of the Harkonnens and become a upper house.
Well, yeah, it's escaping the debt of the Harkonnens because let's just be fair, being leveraged by them is not pleasant for anyone. So you have your concept, you have the archetype, put skills. Your primary skills rated at 6 initially. Secondaries are 5, all others are rated as 4, as you have no familiarity. You also have 5 more points around your skills for a maximum of 8. Then you have your focuses, then you have your talents. And then you have drives and drive statements. The drives combine with your skills, and you have to roll under. It's pretty simple. Basically, it is low good, high bad, and you roll a t20. So let's look at faction characters and templates because they have a few templates already. You can be a Bene Gesserit sister. That's one of the characters you can be. You can be a Fremen. You can
They
be a
actually
Mentat.
do have a book on Arrakis, and I believe they expand a bit on Fremen.
Oh yeah, they do. You can be a Spacing Guild agent or a Suk Doctor. Then you pick your archetype. And these are your archetypes at a glance. It's similar to how Vampire the Masquerade would do it. One of
Yep.
the first examples they give you is War Master. You could be a duelist, a sergeant, tactician, blah, blah, blah. There's the socialite variety. Then there are disciples, adepts, and academics. From there, you pick out your skills and then you pick out your focuses. Then you move on to your talents, which is you have 3 talents representing special abilities. Your chosen archetype will provide a single talent and it will suggest other options. You can choose a different talent if you wish, but you should at least have one of them related to your archetypes. And some talents, like Bolt, are connected to skills. And as for drive importances, you have 5 drives. Basically, it's rated on your order of importance. You're always going to do better because you care more. And with that, you go into your picks of drives. You can kind of one way to choose drives would be this way, blah blah blah, and then you move on to making your assets, which that's in chapter 7.
Your talent. You go over talents yet?
I kind of just I'm skimming through because
Yeah, it's getting late. So
it's getting a little long in the tooth. But basically, in terms of talents, you have 3 of them. You should pick from your archetypes your talents. So let me just give an example. I'm going to go into academics because why not? Scholar, because I think the current Quan ruler, the current marquis, would probably be a scholar. Their primary skill is understand. Their secondary skill would be discipline. Focuses include data analysis, deductive reasoning. Their talent should be intensive study, and their drive would be focusing on truth. You can also have power as your option. So for him, you would have to have as your talent intense study, and you would probably want ones that at least one that complements and one that gives you a slight enhancement to your character. Now, as for assets, when it comes to tangible assets, most examples a character should have should be personal equipment, but there are larger things. As for finishing touches, you have traits, ambitions, and personal details. It's very similar to most 2D20 systems by Modiphius. The John Carter book does the same thing, as does the Conan book, as does the Star Trek book. It does feel a bit off at first. Like I will say, if you're entering this and you've never played a Modiphius game, I would probably say this introduces the system a little bit better than the Star Trek one does. The Star Trek one is at least initially a little bit obtuse. This, I think, introduces it a bit better. But once you get it, it's actually pretty simple. I would say it's a little more complex than a standard D20 system, but not by much. And once you figure it out, it's actually easier. Like the bar of entry is a little higher, but I'd say the floor and like once you figure it out, it's like bam, bam, bam. And actually, here is an example of a pregen. Caramole, the commander. Their main drive is faith. From there, it's duty, and then power. Their main skills are in battle and communicate, with stealth as well. And this gives you an idea. So, for example, if you can combine your drive of duty with battle, you would get a 13. You have to roll under 13. Their main talents are hyper awareness, masterful innuendo, and prana bindu conditioning. So she spent some time among the Bene Gesserit. And her starting assets are blackmail evidence, a concealable knife, and a personal ornithopter.
Oh, nice.
So then there's talents. Here's a variety of them. You get to pick two of the other ones besides the one from your archetype. I would recommend trying to. Although they do tell you up front, some of them are required to be a thing, like Bene Gesserit or Fremen or Mentat. For example, resilience. You can only resist defeat once per scene. You can do this twice per scene because you're a Fremen. Twisted Mentat, you have to be a Mentat. Verify, you have to be a Mentat. To have the voice, you have to be a Bene Gesserit. And then they give you a creation in play, which I don't know why this exists personally. My guess is this is for the GM.
Be.
Fair enough. So let's see, and then we get into the rule system. As for the dice, it uses a 20-sided die. The number of die being rolled is x d20, where x is the number of dice being rolled, so 2d20 means two 20-sided dice. Some situations or abilities allow you to re-roll. They talk about scenes and traits, the effects of traits.
I do give the types of difficulty. Uh,
Yep.
so
Uh, yep. Difficulty is a thing.
the difficulty, I believe, is how many successes they need to get.
Mm-hmm.
They can in fact allow a test on difficulty of 0, but
What's the
it,
point usually?
um, quality of the action may still apply.
Mm-hmm. The most common results are average or challenging, so you need at least 2 successes. You need
You
at least
select
as
the
many
skill,
successes on the skill test result as difficulty to unlock.
you select your drive. Um,
If the drive statement clashes with the action or doesn't support it, Game Master may offer you a point of determination. Either comply or challenge it. So you have to pick your drive, and then the skill test works. The game sets you set the difficulty. It's usually between 1 to 5. You should also finalize. You take 2 d20s and any additional d20s you've bought for the skill test, because you have your own point system. You can buy other dice, or you can actually give the DM a fuck you die that they can use later on. Each d20 that rolls equal to or less than scores as a single success. Each die that rolls a 1 is critical, which gives you 2. If a focus applies, then each die that rolls equal to or less than is also a critical success. 20 is a complication. So you can kind of understand how 2d20 works. You traditionally only have 2d20, but you have an economy system. Difficulty would
here,
normally be 2, but reduces this to 1 as you have the trait honorable.
I don't
So
get why all the Dune houses let the Bene Gesserit educate their daughters. Such an obviously bad idea. The thing is, it's very powerful.
it's very
Definitely,
powerful, and they're a secretive order that have their own schemes. That's why.
and like the whole genetic breeding thing, they help with securing alliances, and while you have them under your employ, I mean, they will help you. I think their reputation, they are having their own plots, but
They also do
they
have a
never,
reputation.
yeah, so they never wanted to be like
They
causing the direct downfall of a house.
they want to seem neutral and respectable. That's usually why they try to make a point to keep everything hidden.
And there's also the fact that, well, they can use their special abilities to avoid people knowing about them.
If you're wondering the way that the system works, since people are a bit curious about it, each time you get more than one success, you get what's called momentum, which you can channel to use it for more dice. You can also give it up for other reasons. To improve the odds, you sometimes can't succeed in more challenging ones. So what you use is you can spend momentum. You can buy up to 3d20 for that. You can also generate threat, which is used by the GM to fuck with you. You can also use determination or assistance. Assistance can actually give you another chance as well. You can also save momentum, which is called the momentum pull. You can never have more than one. And at the end of each scene, you lose a point. It's mostly used for buying d20s. You can also create a trait as well, if you have one. You can also create an asset with it, and you can obtain info. As for complications, that's something that the GM can use. So, do you kind of understand how 2d20 works now?
Yeah.
I Same with threat. That's their version is threat. The way it works is it's kind of a push and pull between the players and the GM. The GM wants you to spend momentum, and the players want to keep at least as keep lowish threat. It's actually good to usually have a little bit of threat because it can allow you to actually succeed otherwise where you can't. Because you basically can buy a d20 with threat. But keep in mind, the more threat the GM has, the more likely they can screw you.
But Jimmy posted already some heraldry on the Discord.
Oh yeah, if you're wondering, we have a Discord. It's in the description link. Also, you can get a copy of Dune: Adventures in the Imperium by going to
I like.
Modiphius' website, which is also in the description of our little stream. And I think we can kind of stop here, unless you want to look at some of the assets.
Um, no, I think generally get the idea. One thing I do like the system, because there is little crunch to it. It makes sense considering conflict is not as, you know, in detail.
Yeah, I mean,
You're doing assassinations.
well, I mean,
You're
you also do honor
doing mind games.
duels. You occasionally do minimal skirmishes, occasionally warfare, but it's usually espionage, intrigue, personal duels, and skirmishes. And conflict traditionally is around your assets because you have a lot of personal assets. It feels clunky because they're trying to really video gamify it, I think, which is a bit of a negative. But essentially, you have conflicts, and this is where you run into essentially warfare, combat, social, basically social play or espionage,
Yeah, yeah. If you're trying to do social combat,
because that's a
the
thing.
same thing applies, but you're putting up an asset at risk. I believe though duels, they actually do have a bit more of a detail on dueling.
They do. Action and dueling. You have movement. Moving assets in a duel reflects moving weapons. So any asset worn on your character's person represents their overall position in a situation. Any asset mounted upon one of your character's arms begins the conflict in one of the other zones. Because dueling is kind of important. You can move arms in an attempt to get an attack. He tries to keep one knife on the offensive, moving into defense zones, keeps one in defense zone. I feel like the way it handles dueling is a little clunky personally. I'm gonna be honest. I think I kind of prefer what Star Trek's take did, but you have to keep in mind this is also Dune, where personal combat's a lot more important. So this is an attempt to kind of create a slightly more elaborate combat system. Basically, you have to determine whether you keep a weapon on standby or to use it to attack, and by how much. I should look at the combat diagram. I don't know where that is, so I'm just gonna kind of quickly skim through. There's also espionage.
I
It,
think it's supposed to be on page 171.
oh, I must have skipped it then. Oh, there you go. This is actually kind of how combat works. You have two regions called the guard zone, and you have what's known as shielding. Essentially, this is something you kind of have to factor in, at least in dueling. Physical environment doesn't really matter as much. It's not quite the same as skirmishes or, warfare. So they put a little more effort into it, which is again slightly to its detriment, but I kind of understand why. Let's see, any other things I want to show off? Zones in response, social groups and secure places. So there's the place, there's the group, there's the smuggling operation, and then there's the. I don't know why they needed that chart to explain it, but I guess it's for Babby's first attempt to be a spy or to be a smuggler.
But it does say the person does this, then the groups do this, and place.
Fair enough. And then there's warfare, which is playing around with movement and terrain, armed forces, blah 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 blah.
Intrigue, and so it detailed in the different kinds of actions you could do.
Yeah, it,
Uh,
it basically has its own kind of rule system.
I think, yeah, it's good to wrap up.
Yep.
Uh, I will say I do like, actually, I do like this system where it is a little bit more open. You have these different kinds of combat, but they're still, let's say, abstracted.
Yeah, that is a benefit. It has multiple forms of combat. It's conflict. It has multiple forms of conflict, but none of them are overly complicated. I think it slightly weakens the game's effect, at least a little bit, but it also makes sense because you're kind of also playing not just a character, you're playing a noble house.
And I believe, in fact, actually, there's another book on various noble houses, actually detailing more than just the Harkonnens and the Atreides, and sort of the day-to-day responsibilities of a household. So it's almost like a management simulator and a role-playing game at the same time.
Well, yeah, because Heart of Hearts, it is essentially feudalism the game. If you actually want to, you could unironically convert this for a Song of Ice and Fire. Like you genuinely could convert this to a Song of Ice and Fire. It would work just as well for that.
Actually, you're right. Face dancers could be replaced with what's the group of assassins?
Faceless Men.
Yeah, faceless
I
men.
mean, there's actually other assassin groups from Song of Ice and Fire. There's also I believe they're called Sorrowful Men, where they have to legitimately say "I am so sorry" before they kill you.
They're Canadians.
No, they're another assassin order that's native to Essos. There's actually a few of them.
What are the other ones?
Let's
One
see, Faceless
faceless,
Men,
one
Sorrowful Men. I believe there was like one more group that was well known
joyful
for
men.
using. I don't know. The Fremen would be the equivalent of the Free Folk. The
Yeah.
Bene Gesserit are basically Maesters, if you think about it.
Um, what would the things beyond the wall be?
The others,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
I guess if they did a future book, The Honored Matres.
I guess. I wouldn't know. All I do know
Uh,
is that, unironically, I may have done a little bit of fun probing, but there's a reason why Dune was so influential in science fiction as well as fantasy to a degree, because it kind of straddles the line between both. It's almost a reprisal of one of the first sci-fi adventure serials, the Barsoom series, courtesy of Edgar Rice Burroughs, which is also responsible for gore. Remember that BDSM fan fiction?
yeah, and I realize a lot of fiction ends up being someone's magical realm.
But yeah, unironically, Dune is an interesting take on sci-fi because usually when you think of it, you think of laser guns and long space travel into the future. No, no, it's not. It is personal combat and warfare. It is almost fantasy in its scope, and it is following a humanity that is essentially reliant on one device, one Achilles heel, and unironically, at any point, it can just all come tumbling down, as
And
Leto
it
the
is,
Second did.
and it is sort of a subversion of classic hero's journey. Turns out the leader has to do a lot of awful things.
Well, not only that, but the leader himself didn't even have a choice in the matter. He was conditioned to become what he does.
I do like how in the second book, uh, Paul is compared to Hitler and Genghis Khan. I believe Stilgar laughs at it and says, basically you have a you're better than them because you have a bigger kill count.
Yeah, unironically, by the end of the crusade, the Fremen Crusade, or whatever it's called, I think he killed something like a third of humanity.
Billions.
Billions literally died. He has a kill count higher than most dictators. I think the last time bloodshed that bad happened was during the Butlerian Jihad, and then his son
And remember,
fucks it up anyway and ruins it all.
no, yeah, Paul Paul actually balked at what he would have had to do. Golden Path is what his son did, and it was basically trap humanity in state of stagnation for thousands of years.
That sounds really dumb.
Uh, well, basically the idea of it ultimately was to it, I'm gonna spoil it. Uh, to spread the genes of like his genes or genes of one of his descendants to throughout humanity, so that they could not be detected by the great enemy. Uh,
Which is made up for the end of the books for no reason.
I think there was hints of it. Herbert just made it. It's the machines again. But basically, what it does, because Paul, or the Bene Gesserit and Paul and his descendants, they have prescience. They are able to see in the future, see in the past. If you do not have it, you cannot be detected by them and therefore not controlled by them. Effectively, Golden Path is to constrain humanity and oppress it so that it could eventually be free.
That's what we call brain dead. No, unironically,
Uh,
there's a reason why even people who love the series usually just say read the first fucking book and that's it. It gets dumb.
here's what I think of it. The Emperor 140K is kind of what the Golden Path would have resulted in. Doing it goes off, it works. Warhammer, if you think about it, same thing, but it doesn't. It fucks up horribly, and humanity is damned because one guy thought he could play God.
And that's why I think, because this whole thing is to try to avoid the great other or whatever, what's to stop them from just, because you, congrats, retard, you just ruined humanity. What's to stop them from just, like, wiping out most of humanity?
The idea, I think, behind it is because after the collapse of the Imperium, humanity would spread out so far, so
With what
numerous that
assets? With what assets? Good job, retard, you ruined faster than light travel.
the Ixians have new faster than light travel that uh, uses no ships. Basically, new technology is built.
Okay. I don't disagree with this, but like congrats, you replaced one spacer guild with another spacer guild. Good job, dumbass.
Think no, it's not the spacer guilds in control of it. It's basically every ship. I guess, has a navigation computer. It's not
And
controlled by anyone. It's
what's to stop it
decentralized.
from having a warranty that you have to listen to House Vernius or else?
I maybe the plans are open source.
In a universe which has literal reasons for you to serve forever under the same caste?
I mean, God Emperor did have thousands of years, so
Look, I'm just saying Leto the Second is as dumb as Anathema is.
I'm still in the second book. I need to get to that one. So
I wonder how much. I wonder how much. Well, we actually know how much crack he smoked. He became a worm. He became a big floppy worm.
and then the offspring from the worm fell off to become new sandworms.
Again, there's a reason people usually throw out the remaining Dune books.
Come on, that's trippy.
Yeah, but who cares
I
if
like
it's
that
nowhere
kind of
near as
trippy
good?
sci-fi. I'm the kind of guy that actually liked Zardoz.
See,
It's
Leto's
crazy.
plans annoy me because it has the same mentally challenged energy as Char Aznable's plans did for Char's counterattack. I will force humanity to embrace the stars and free their souls from gravity by just launching fucking asteroids at it until they do.
I mean, again, since off of
Same mentally
Warhammer.
retarded energy, let's be fair.
It, yeah, same thing. Warhammer. It's like, okay, I'm gonna unite humanity by creating genetically enhanced child soldiers. Use warp energy to create their leaders. Do not tell them about the warp energy. After they have conquered the galaxy, fuck off. Do not tell them why I'm fucking off. And once I'm done, probably kill them all off and let humanity evolve into a psychic race hiding away from chaos.
Not a good plan.
Oh no, it's not a good plan. Remember, yeah,
Especially since he made 20 legions that were all designed to be, just like half of them basically were just, what's the term? Not disposable, but like where you have a backup.
they're disposable.
Well, you know what I mean, like where you have a backup, like there's an opposite that you can rely on instead.
Fallback, failsafe.
Failsafe, thank you.
Oh,
Like if
yeah,
the
no, but
Iron Warriors fall to chaos, just use the Imperial Fists. They do the same fucking thing.
um, eh,
You can argue they're different all you want, but both of them specialize in siege warfare.
oh, and well, what's the opposite of Well, yeah, I was thinking Thousand Suns, but then it's like Space Wolves. But the other thing is,
Space Wolves are fucking hypocrites. They let their psychers do all they wanted because they thought it was magic.
by the time there's thing, two of them failed. The legions failed. Um, one of them decided to put wires into their head. Another one's made up of child prisoners. Uh, one of them one of them thinks that they are the Primarch themselves, or been
Thank you,
told that they're
Squirrel
the
Killer.
Primarch themselves.
Redundant. I was thinking of the word redundant.
Um, one of them's religious fundamentalists. One of them are secret cannibals.
It doesn't
Uh,
matter. Basically, they all have the same
uh,
fucking function. You got one that specializes in just straight up war, two that specialize in just straight up murder, warfare. You got two that specialize in stealth actions. You got two that specialize in tactical flexibility. You got two that specialize in siege warfare. And you got two that are designed to deal with heavy assault. Like there's a like they basically one serves the role of the other. That was something I noticed when unironically might as well mention. At one point, one of the fun things you should always do, especially since 1D4 chan's back up, feel free to make up your
1d6 chan.
alternate feel free to make up your alternate heresy takes. One of the fun ones that we did was actually an alternate take where it's Perturabo that's the lead traitor. Because I got to play around with Hashut with that one. Basically, because of the dwarves coming back, that allowed me to play with abominable intelligences, And I think that's an excellent way to bring back the Dowie Czar by having a Shut be a Man of Iron AI.
I like the one the Dornian heresy where the Ultramarines fucked off and basically became the Tau. There's
Oh,
one
the
image of
Ultramarines in the Perturabo heresy take, they actually are led by essentially the Mafia because Gilliman grew up on Nostromo and became Lord of Crime, which I thought was amazing.
okay, now I want to make a successor chapter that's just the Sopranos characters.
I mean, that's essentially what the Ultramarines are by that point.
Nothing more than a glorified crew.
Like Marnius Calgar, just Marnius Calgar is now essentially just a mob boss. Let's put in the what's their term for cement cementine.
I'm trying to think of then all the characters from Sopranos that would fit. Um, Christopher is Cato Sicarius. Maybe Silvio. Ollie is the chaplain. Silvio is Tigurius. Junior's Telian. Um, who would be Uriel Ventress then?
I have no clue. All I do know, because I haven't really watched a lot of
We're
Sopranos, so
rambling out of this.
with that in
We're
mind,
rambling out.
you can feel free to again. Last time we'll share our Discord. Feel free to like and subscribe, whatever you feel like it. And actually, because of the fact that we're recovering from a sickness, and because we're talking about 40K, we are going to talk about Tome of Decay next week. So you get to see Grandpa's blessings and its Black Crusade. So I think you'll enjoy that. So with that, have an excellent night, and